Thank you for tuning into another breakdown video. Before the breakdown of Nowhere Man starts, I want to let you know that I decided to take out the audio clips of Nowhere Man. That would be the audio clips of the song, the Beatles song playing. There were some copyright issues, and I decided, I'd rather just take them out. But you're not losing a whole lot. I may put the full video up in my Patreon at some point. There's a little more commentary that kind of got taken out because I had to take out the audio clips as well. So if you're interested in joining my Patreon, which I'm kind of just getting started right now, feel free to go join over there, and certainly it will be up there at some point, and as will some of my other upcoming videos that I may have to do the same thing with these audio clips. However, check out part 2 if you do want to hear some actual audio clips. And in part 2, I break down some isolated tracks, and they did throw some copyrights at me for this one, but I just kept it up because I don't want to mess around with that, because honestly, why would I take out Paul's bass line? Because we want to hear that. We want to hear some great vocals. We want to hear George's vocal, John's vocal, Paul's vocal. I definitely broke down all those vocals there. So if you're interested in checking that out, that's part 2. And it's kind of an extension of part 1. I'm just still breaking down the song, but doing some isolated tracks. So hope you enjoy the full breakdown of the song with chords, melody, and some lyrics, and everything too, just without those audio clips. So pull up your Nowhere Man, from wherever you're going to listen to it. And I give you some timestamps along the way so you can kind of follow along, but it shouldn't be too hard, I don't think. So enjoy the video, subscribe, and like, and I'll try to get some notifications there so you can get the next video that comes up. And thanks in advance for watching. Hello and welcome to another breakdown video. Today we're going to be breaking down the Beatles' Nowhere Man. Definitely one of my favorite songs on Rubber Soul. I definitely want to talk about the music, the melody, all the great harmonies, vocal harmonies, as well as some of the parts too in the song, which really make the song really stand out. The song itself is very simple. There aren't that many chords. Fairly straightforward, at least for a Beatles song of this period. Not much complexity in the songwriting itself, but the details and the recording and what they did with the guitars and so forth. We'll get into all of that. So I'm excited to talk about the song. But, just to kind of put the song into kind of a proper context, because sometimes I think that's really important. Rubber Soul was recorded in 1965, around fall, I guess, of 65. It was released Christmas time. 65 was just an earth-shattering year for popular music. To me, it's really when folk and pop, or folk and rock, I guess you could say, kind of melded a little bit. I think a really good example of this is Bob Dylan, who himself came up and became successful as a folk musician, kind of in the style of Woody Guthrie. And then, of course, he went on to write his own fantastic songs, protest songs, and, all acoustic, with some minimal instrumentation, other instrumentation. And, in 65, I believe that's the year that he first kind of plugged in the studio. And of course, in some of his live shows, which, unfortunately, he had some mixed results with the reception of that. That's when he plugged in and he started to make folk songs that kind of sounded like rock, because he used electric guitars and he used a full band to play some of those. So the album, Bringing It All Back Home, to me, even though everybody talks about Highway 61 as being a really one of the most groundbreaking albums of Bob Dylan, I feel like this one is just as groundbreaking because it really points the way to that next album. Both albums, I believe, were recorded in 65 as well. He expanded kind of what you could do as an artist. And to me, Bob Dylan points the way to the Beatles in a way of how to say, I don't have to stay in the lane that brought me success. I can do something different and kind of do it kind of in a really direct and unafraid way. And that's honestly really encapsulates the Beatles too, especially once you get into Rubber Soul and into the rest of their catalog. You've got, they're always changing from one album to the next. There's always a difference. And even in the early albums, you can hear a progression. You can hear things sounding a little different from one album to the next, for sure. But Rubber Soul is where they got more creative control of things, or not, I shouldn't say creative control, but in terms of this in the studio, being able to actually do the things they want to do sonically. And I think marijuana was an important part of this for sure. I mean, much gets made of this, but it's certainly important. And it really kind of expanded their outlook a little bit. And in terms of their songwriting, it expanded what they could do lyrically, I think. It helped expand what they could do lyrically and musically as well. If you look at Rubber Soul itself, I mean, you have lyrics mostly are about relationships, and that's how they were from the beginning. But on Rubber Soul, it's more introspective. There's more interesting kind of angles, if you will, on them. So, you have with Norwegian Wood, you have basically, you have a song about a one-night stand with a pretty sophisticated and intelligent woman. You have I'm Looking Through You, which is kind of a metaphor, with being able to literally look through somebody. But actually, it's really about just what happens when you kind of start to lose a connection with somebody that maybe you were in love with, and now you don't really feel like you know them at all. And that's kind of a new thing, I feel like, in the Beatles. And of course, George, with songs like Think for Yourself, in terms of the lyrics, very biting, very direct kind of breakup song. So, I mean, you've had songs like that before, but honestly, the lyrics on Rubber Soul for all three are definitely getting better, all improving and getting better and getting a little more diverse in what they're writing about. To me, though, I mean, John Lennon really owns this album in terms of the lyrical content. I mean, his lyrics in this album are just fantastic. And another thing about this period that John had said that, this period he was kind of a little bit lost. I mean, the song Help, he wrote kind of as an actual cry for help. Whether he realized it consciously at that point, I don't know. And I know that it certainly wasn't publicized at that point, but he was kind of a little bit all over the place in terms of where his mental state was at that point. So Help was definitely the second real autobiographical song that John wrote. And in this period, he had a lot of trouble kind of coming up with songs. It was a little bit more of a laborious process. They didn't just sort of come out the way they had before. And I think it's fair, with everything going on in 1965 and 64, just the pressures on the Beatles and what they did. It's just astounding what they did amidst everything and all the pressures that they had to kind of produce, keep writing these great songs. Make a movie in 64, make another one in 65. And in 65, you make an album called Help, which is kind of a sort of half of it's kind of a soundtrack for the movie. And then you've got 2 tours, I believe, that they did in 65. They may have been wrapping up a tour from 64 into 65. I don't quite remember the timeline, but they had a tour. They did the movie Help. They did the album Help. And then they did another tour. And then they came back into the studio in probably, like I said, early fall, maybe 65. And it's just amazing that they were able to get in there, and then they make an album like Rubber Soul, which is, such high quality. And we could hear the progression in their sort of discography from first album up through, Help. You can hear it. You can hear the progression. I would argue on Beatles for Sale and Help, you have varying success with some of the songs, in terms of what you're trying to do, but they are trying to do something different. They're trying to make a new sound every album, So Rubber Soul, they finally kind of hit it and find something really, really unique. The other thing about 65 in terms of the folk kind of rock scene is you have a band called the Byrds, who their first album, I believe, was in 65. And they were writing songs that were kind of rock arrangements of Bob Dylan songs. And a lot of their songs from the first couple albums, a good chunk of those songs are by Bob Dylan, actually. And so you're taking folk and you're kind of changing it and you're making it into a new kind of a sound. Mr. Tambourine Man, which the original recording of that and how Bob Dylan performed it early on was just purely acoustic. And then the Byrds took it and made it into a rock number. The Beatles really took notice of the Byrds and, of course, Bob Dylan as well. And I mentioned those two, Byrds and Bob Dylan, in America, because that's kind of what the Beatles were listening to in terms of American artists at that point, besides the obvious Motown music that they were absorbing as well. So, lots of influences all coming together on this album for sure. Now you have songs that are, again, about relationships, but definitely some more unique kind of ways of looking at it, and some different perspectives and interesting stories that are basically being told here. But Nowhere Man in particular, I mean, is a really different kind of song because it isn't about relationships. It's really very existential. The song itself came after a tough writing session where John was really struggling. I'm not clear if he was working with Paul during the session or if he was just doing kind of something, just working a bit on his own. But he was really struggling to come up with an idea. He was just really just working his ass off trying to get it done.
Yeah, I use Nowhere Man as an example simply because I remember I struggled all morning, about 6 hours to write a song the day I wrote Nowhere Man in 1964 sometime. And I finally gave up. We've all experienced this on different levels. I lay down on the couch, I was really depressed. Can't write a song. And as I lay down exhausted like that, because I was no longer centered on this, I have to write a song, I just lay down. I picked up the guitar and the whole damn thing was there. Well, all these songs came like that.
And to me, that's an important thing because with this song, as I mentioned before, musically, it's not that complicated. It's a very simple song, as we'll get into. But in terms of the arrangement and in terms of how it was recorded and the different things that were done to make it sound the way it sounds is really special. So again, you have kind of a simple song. And in terms of the song structure, it does kind of feel a little bit like a folk song. You have a more of a back and forth kind of a thing, which is, definitely, there are lots of folk songs that are going to kind of use that. So there's a folk element, I think, already embedded into the song. It's definitely there. And I think that you can hear, again, the simplicity of this song. And that's why I want to break this song down, is the simplicity of it, the beauty of that song. And again, then we'll get into all the layers of everything. So let's dive into the music a little bit. If this is something that you're interested in, if you like Beatle breakdowns or Radiohead, for instance, as well, I also do a breakdowns of their songs. Please like this video, subscribe, definitely hit the notifications so you know when I upload something. I don't upload things on a totally regular basis. I might do it every week sometimes, but sometimes it might be every 2 weeks. So get that notification up there so that every time I post something, you'll see it and you can check it out then. So let's get right to Nowhere Man and enjoy this music. As I said in the intro, I think I want to break down the song, kind of start with the really basic elements, this chords, lyrics, melody, and then get into the little bit more finer details, hopefully. Get into the bass line, which I think is really, really great. I want to go through the actual vocals, the harmonies, kind of who's singing what, and play the harmonies right here on the keyboard. So we'll definitely do that. So just to break down the instruments a little bit, you have the rhythm guitar, that's John playing. And of course you got John doing the lead vocal. And then you have the Fender Stratocasters. There's two. George is playing one and John is playing the other. George is doing the solo work, all of the kind of obligato stuff that you hear throughout the song. John is doubling the solo itself, the guitar solo itself, so you actually have both of them playing. So the basic rhythm track that was laid down was just three Beatles, actually. You have obviously Ringo on drums, Paul on bass, and John on the acoustic, right? And I'm going to and George's stuff was all added sort of after. I'm going to play this on piano as that's my instrument. That's what I play. And I like to break things down that way. And I can give you the chords right here as well. And the voicing, again, I'm going to do it the way you would probably voice it, the way it was with the second capo. That's what I'm going to be playing when I break down the chords. Nowhere Man's in E major. So the chords for Nowhere Man are... E major is your one chord. Okay, that's the tonic chord, kind of the first chord of the key, right? F sharp minor is also represented. That's the 2. It's really a 7 chord usually. I'll talk about the voicing of that a little bit in a moment. That's your 2, basically, or 2/7. Your 3, that's G sharp minor. Okay, G sharp, B, D sharp. It's your 3. A major is your 4. And B major is your 5, and sometimes it might be B7 as well. So those are the 5 chords that are sort of called the diatonic chords, right? The only other chord that's in the song is A minor, right? Now that chord functions as a minor 4. So let's say here's our 1, right? 2, 3, 4 is A major, but if I play, right? Very common, very stylistically distinctive move. And it just gives you that minor, that's minor third instead of the major third, which is here, like that. One other quick thing about the chords. When I play F sharp minor 7, I'm playing it like this. I play F sharp in the bass, maybe an octave sometimes, and I'll play C sharp, E, A in the right hand. That is an A major chord by itself. A, C sharp, and E, okay? So I play A major and F sharp in the bass. That creates F sharp minor 7. How does that work? F sharp minor, the triad is F sharp, A, C sharp, okay? A minor 7 chord is a minor 7th from the bottom, the interval. Minor 7, that would be an E. That's the full chord. Now, I'm going to spread that chord out, play C sharp, E up here. So I actually am keeping these in the same place, but I'm putting A on the top, like that, right? And that's how it would be played with that second, with the capo on that second fret too. We'd hear it like that. That's what it would sound like, I guess, like that, right? Full chord. Let's listen a little bit to the beginning, and then we're going to break down the verse. And here we go. Start off a cappella, which is just a great choice. I just love that beginning and just hearing them all singing right there at the beginning. I'm going to break down the chords all the way from the beginning. So E major, B major, A major, E major, okay, and then F sharp minor 7, A minor, E major, okay. Let me give you that more rhythmically, kind of soundly here. He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Right? So those are the chords in the verse. Now, before you jump in and go, wait, isn't that the chorus, right? You can call it the chorus if you want. I mean, a lot of times I've seen it called the chorus, and then every verse after it, as we're going to hear, is the same music. So I just honestly consider it a verse. And as we've done with some other Beatles songs, there are songs that don't actually have a chorus, but you've got the hook there in the verse. So that kind of gives you that hook that you're kind of listening for, right? We have the title, of course. So it does feel a lot like a chorus. And if he wrote the song in a different way, I'm betting that would be a chorus and there'd be something different for the verses. But he just kept the same music for the verses, and I think it works really, really well that way. So here's verse. So that's the chords for verse 1. And here's verse 2, and then I'm going to break down the chords again and the melody. All right. So again, chord. Verse. So you got intro / verse, basically same thing. He's a real nowhere man. A. So it's 1 to 5, 4 to 1. Then 2, 7, minor 4, and 1. All right. Now the other instrumental element here. This is this thing that comes back every single time. Every verse you have, we hear this line. This is George's lead guitar here. Now, generally speaking, he plays a chord on the first note. And I think it's usually an E major chord. The first time, he plays a slightly different chord, and it's interesting. It's an interesting sound. We get this chord right here, and it's kind of almost an E9 when you combine everything. But George is playing, I believe, this. Right? Comes in like that. So it's just like, I like that. It's a little interesting kind of way that it's played there. So let's just take that back now. Now we're going to listen to verse 1 and 2. and then we'll break down the melody. Here's the melody and lyrics. He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Some interesting chords that happen when you play the melody itself. I'll play the second verse. It's the same as the first in terms of the notes. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me? So this is the interesting one for me. I don't know, that crazy. If you see the chord symbol on my screen right now, A minor major 7 is basically what that would be. If you took the melodic note, put it in with the chord, and you get basically what you get. Okay, I'm not going to label that chord like that though. But what's interesting is he's singing the second note of the scale, da, da, then to the fourth note, then to the third note. That's a G sharp. If I want to play an A minor chord with that, you know, he just resolves finally down to the E, which is really part of that chord, right? And you know, and very often the Beatles use 6 chords on a 4 as well sometimes, so that you can almost consider it that too, but not in terms of what's being played. Right? So we end up on that. Just like that a lot. I mean, and it's not something you notice necessarily just listening to the song. You know, you have to really break it down, hear the melody, put the melody in with the chord, and it's like, oh, there it is. That's an interesting chord there. So there's your melody. So he's a real nowhere man, right? So it goes just stepping down, right, and then sitting in his nowhere land. Kind of does the same thing, right? And I just love the lyrics there, you know. He's a real nowhere man sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me? You know, and there's something different when he sings that line. That's a really special line in the song, and I may have said it in my intro, like that. That's the line that holds the whole song together, and it really makes the listener go, "Wait a minute, what? Yeah, right. Maybe it is like me. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. What am I doing? You know?" And it makes the listener kind of reflect a little bit, and I love musically this song. It's like, this is one of the first songs when I started listening to the Beatles in high school. This was the song that I heard, and I was like, that's so musical. Like he sings that a little more softly there. You know, isn't he a bit like you and me? Like just maybe like whispering in your ear a little bit. You know. I just absolutely love that. So let's jump in now to the bridge. Here we go. So let's do the chords for the bridge. So the bridge, G sharp minor is our first chord, and then so that's our 3, minor 3, and A major, and then back to G sharp minor again, and then A major again, G sharp minor again, and then F sharp minor 7. F sharp minor 7 again, and B7. Now I think with the harmonies it's a B7 really, but if the chords I think are just still a straight B major chord here, just a regular plain old 5 chord there. All right, so let's take it through the chords again. 3, G sharp minor, 3 chord, A major 4 chord, G sharp minor 4. 3, and now a 2-7. This is your F sharp minor 7, and then 5, and then we're launched into the solo, which is the same music as the verse, just with a guitar solo. This definitely feels like an early place to put a guitar solo too for the Beatles in terms of what they've done before. But so again, little structural, interesting things in this song that we're going to kind of see as we go through it. So chords, that's it for the chords. Now, in terms of the melody, he starts on the third here. Nowhere, nowhere, man, please listen. So we go, please listen. Then we go, kind of do the same thing. What you're missing. Right? He's just singing down to the E sharp there, and da da da. Wait, and then so he jumps up to an E there, which is the seventh of this chord. It's just the tonic note though, the 1, da, and then down to 7, 6, 5. Right, but that note against the 2 chord makes it a 7th there. This is something that the Beatles do a lot that I love, where they're holding on a chord, they're delaying the resolution of 2/7, very often is going to go to 5. It's going to sort of resolve to 5, if that makes sense. Like in classical terms, we would call that like a half cadence, like that, right? But the melody anticipates that kind of before you get to that chord. I love that. And Paul does this a lot too, and John does it as well. I think they all do it to one extent or another. Right? Because you could have gone, world is at your command. Right? Right? You could have done that, but I like just holding it. Right? Now we have the chorus now. So minor side. So you get this beautiful harmonic note. What they did here is they actually didn't use Rickenbackers. They used there's 2 Stratocasters, John's and George. I think it was the same model even. I don't remember the model name. I'm not a guitar guy by any means. But George, I think, wrote the solo or constructed the solo. John learned it, played along with him. So they recorded it exactly playing the same thing. So you really hear 2 guitars here on this guitar solo. So let's play back the solo for a minute so we can kind of listen to that. So yeah, so George and John are both playing that simultaneously. I do believe that the harmonic at the end is just George, from what I've heard. But mainly they're playing the exact same thing. And the sound that you get for this is most certainly not the sound that it sounded like when they actually played it. They asked the engineers to EQ it so much so that it was they basically took all the highs and just really amplified the highs and took out all the lows. And they did that, and then they got that sound and said, okay, let's do it a little more and more and more. They actually did it 3 times. So this is like a 3-time high EQ kind of thing here all the way through. So they did that to achieve that sound. Now, why they didn't just use the Rickenbackers, which were probably already going to create that sound, I don't know. But at any rate, it was groundbreaking in terms of being able to just be in a studio and say, let's do this. Because at the time, engineers would have been like, nope, not going to do that. I don't want to get fired. They did it, and I'm sure George Martin probably said, let's just try it and see how it goes. It's phenomenal, and it creates a great sound. And I want to point out with the solo that the melody of the song, right? Let's recap that melody. I'll play it down here. Okay. Now let's listen to the guitar solo. What's that doing? It's kind of doing the opposite, isn't it? It's going, instead of, it's going in opposite directions there, right? And then it does it there. There's the melody on the bottom. There's the solo on top. You never hear the 2 together, so that's why maybe it's not noticeable right off the bat. And I'm sure I didn't notice it for a long time till I just went to play the notes and say, oh, pretty cool. So the solo is just inverting the melody, which is really cool. A cool way of doing it. It's not like an exact inversion of the actual notes of the melody. It's just the contour of it. Instead of going down, it goes up, or instead of going up, it goes down. So pretty cool, almost like a little mirror image, right? But it's just really cool, you know? And then, right? So there's your solo. Again, kind of really cool the way that it's sort of inverted from the melody. Let's take it back to the beginning. Let's listen to all of this up to this point. So let's look at that ending. So you have, again, repeating that. Making all is nowhere plans for nobody. So that little melodic thing, it's the same thing that George has been playing all the way through the song, but you have da, 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 da. Instead of going down to here, we go to F sharp, which is the two of the two, which matches the chord there. So making all his nowhere plans for nobody, and then making all his nowhere plans for nobody, and then Paul, of course, steals the show with this harmony up there, and you have we're gonna do these harmonies in a minute, but making all his nowhere plans for nobody. So really great. I love the way that kind of ends the song there. You know, that little guitar lick just repeats throughout the entire song. You almost barely know it's there because it repeats, and it just feels like such a part of the song. So that's all the musical elements actually in the entire song now. I love the structure of this song. It's very symmetrical actually. You have verse 1, verse 2, bridge 1, verse 3, bridge 2, verse 2, bridge 1 again, verse 1. So we kind of go 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 in terms of the verses. It's pretty cool. It's a really nice structure actually. You know, and it is a song that for some of us, it might feel like the song takes a long time to get through. It's not a bad thing. It feels long because of all the repetitions, especially that third bridge, I think. But it works, and it's important, I think, to have that repetition of that bridge and reinforce that, you know, the concept that's coming across in terms of just the, you know, you don't know what you're missing. Like, you know, singing that a second time, I think it's really important. Yeah, I love it. It's great. So let's get to the vocals. Now, these are some of my favorite Beatles vocals.